when there's two sides to every coin. Then there's a conversation you can join. But I'm an old dog and there's new tricks. And some of my opinions you just can't fix. 'Cause I'm an old man yelling at the sky. I'ma shake my fists at the clouds and cry. Get off my lawn, you snowflake, before I have a meltdown, breakdown, shakedown. 'Cause this is my hometown, so back down, sports clown. It's all just a game, and it's the last down, let down, cowtown. I said it's all just a game. I give the touchdown, the rundown, the lowdown. 'Cause it's over the game. Gonna crack down and shut down the sundown. I said it's all just a game.
The two, and off the cliff. That's all right. The two best parts about coming back to this life, finally getting my own theme song, off the beaten path. Did that. I love that. And also I get to work with Jack. Jack's the best. Jack's our producer today. Welcome, kids. Hope you're having a great day. This is an inclusive program. Everybody's welcome. Everybody's loved here. We are allies for all. We also are broadcasting live from Treaty 7 territory. So very excited that you could spend some time with us today. A very interesting program. If I dare say so myself, first one where we're going to have a mystery guest. You'll have to stay to the end of the podcast or the live stream for the mystery guest. Also, and I'll make this declaration right now, and I'll probably do it again later in the program, from your Calgary Surge, and I do work for the Calgary Surge in a community advisory position, but I have absolutely nothing to do with basketball operations. So I'm very excited about this. Head coach Nelson Terroba is going to join us. The 3-1 Calgary Surge taking on the Ottawa Blackjacks. Now that's a name. Blackjacks. Of course, for those of us my age who remember Bugs Bunny, of course, this brings back images of Blackjack Shellac. But that means nothing to anybody younger than me, which is probably most of you. Happy you're here. I got to be honest with you. It's been a while. It happens a little bit. Yeah. You know, the Flames needed a general manager. Yep. They needed a coach. Yep. They weren't making the playoffs. But that was, it was like, well, I'm bad. I've been retired for 5 months. I'm unretired. I'm back in the sports thing. Yeah, it's a good story. Yeah, I like them. Craig Conroy, Brad Trilling, friends of the program, getting to talk to Peter Marr and Eric DeHatcher. I don't know what it was. I have no idea what it was. But yesterday at just after 8 o'clock in the morning, I was listening to the Dan Patrick Show, which I often do. One of the guys I enjoy a lot. And news came down that possibly could the PGA and the Live Tour, combine? And what struck me was that, it was breaking for them live on the air, and their first source was TMZ. And then we found out just within minutes, and it became this huge story. And to connect it back to what I was talking about, being retired for 5 years and out of the business, there aren't many times where the leg begins to shake. You got the dog where you roll him all over on his belly and you scratch his belly and all of a sudden the leg starts shaking. That was me yesterday morning. And as I am self-professed, God bless those who love golf, love golf. Golf hates me, and I feel very similar about it, playing-wise. But this is something on a completely different level. I had a hard time turning away yesterday. I had a hard time concentrating. When you look at the totality of what is being proposed here, you look at the hypocrisy, which is rampant through this whole thing. You look at the drama that has been created. you look at the potential ramifications, not only on the sport, but on broadcast, on the golf technology marketplace, the sponsorship components to it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the white whale. This is what guys in my business might go a whole lifetime and not be able to sink their teeth into. This Live PGA, and don't forget the European Tour. And there's a reason I bring up the European Tour, and we'll get into that in a little while. This is huge. This is really, really huge. And for someone whose first professional hockey game as a fan was a WHA game, this brings back a lot of memories, shorter time span, clearly, but some of the same rooted self-interest and holier than thou talk back in the 70s. So I'm really, and I'm glad we got the right guy on. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to bring on our pal, Adam Seaborn, sports business analyst for the Nation Network and from Playmaker Capital, because he's the first guy I thought of. Because this is, I talked about this all the time. When a news story breaks, it's kind of like a nuclear bomb. It goes off, and then the cloud goes out, and then it's the fallout. And we are really starting to live through the fallout right now. We'll get to Adam in just a second. A couple things. First of all, congratulations to Michael Backlund of the Calgary Flames, one of the 3 finalists for the King Clancy Award in the National Hockey League for his commitment on and off the ice to community. Also, a credit to Anders Lee of the New York Islanders and Darnell Nurse of the Edmonton Oilers. These are the 3 players that are vying for the King Clancy Trophy. Michael does so much in our community. I'm deeply connected to a couple of his causes, and Special Olympics, ALS as well, Kids Cancer Care, but Parachutes for Pets, who we talked about on this program, who I do some work for as well. And Michael's been a huge ambassador, influencer, and proponent of the work, and started a program to help kids in foster care with their pets. So he's done, he and his wife Frida have really done an incredible job in this city, in this community, much along the same lines as I think the last guy that was nominated and I think won this award for Calgary, which was Mark Giordano. So again, congratulations to him. All right, I digress. Before though, we do know we are just days away now. This weekend, this Saturday, in Vancouver, UFC 289, Nunez versus Aldana, I should say. The co-main event will see former lightweight champion and number 1 contender Charles Oliveira and surging number 4 Beneil Dariush, and looking forward to that. Plus 6 Canadians on the card. 6 Canadians on the card, and of course headlined by Amanda Nunez taking on Aldana. Nunez, by the way, making a little news yesterday. She was in the New York Post saying that although she's not currently in the process of retiring or thinking about retirement, may look like Ronda Rousey and look at the WWE as a path post UFC. So that's coming up, UFC 289, Nunez and Aldana. Okay, let's get to it, courtesy of our good friends from the Ski Cellar Snowboard. I'm rushing again because I'm so excited. Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com, 76 years in Calgary. Now, in the middle of winter, when the ski hills are open and snowboarding is going on, 4 locations. Right now, just the one, McLeod Trail by Chinook Center, but still some great deals. Great deals. It's amazing. It's amazing. So anyway, with that said, thank you to our sponsor, Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. Very pleased to have join us again, sports business analyst from the Nation Network, also works for Playmaker Capital, Adam Seaborn, friend of the program, if we can say that 3 months in, joins us. I said, I don't know if you heard it, but yesterday, it's been a long time, but I got the wagon leg dog thing going on when this thing went down. I'm trying to think, and I'm sure there are, it's easier to get caught up in the hyperbole of all of this, Adam, but I don't remember as big a story with as much potential ramification in the world of sport than what we got out of golf yesterday.
Yeah, thanks again. And good to be back, Rob. It's hard to recall the last time I was genuinely shocked. No one saw this coming. There was no rumblings of this. There was no No one within the golf media had leaked anything to the effect of this. And golf is notorious for leaks. There's so many athletes, there's so many players, and this was genuinely a really shocking story.
24 hours, some time to digest. I felt like even last night, I didn't fully understand what had happened. So, and this is not my phraseology, but somebody said it yesterday, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Can you walk us through this, but explain it to me like I'm, in junior high again, because boy, there's some real twists and turns in this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, the headline to me when I saw the news and after reading a little bit, I think the word merger was put out. This is not a merger. To me, the only way to read this situation is that the Saudis have taken golf private. That is the headline to me. And to understand that headline, you need to kind of peel back the layers on how professional golf works, which is a pretty complicated process compared to some other sports leagues out there. So to give people a little bit of context, the PGA Tour operates as what's called a 501c6 corporation. People may know that, but that essentially means that they are a member organization. Each player is a member of the tour. They have a board and they have executives that are compensated, like Jay Monahan, who will come up later. But for all intents and purposes, they're a not-for-profit organization. Now, why the tour was set up like this, we don't necessarily have time to get into that, but goes back to the inception of the PGA Tour, and each individual event within the tour acts as both a member organization event, an opportunity for the members of the tour to perform and make money, but also as a charity event. And that's allowed them to totally be exempt from taxes. And forever we've been told about how the PGA Tour has the greatest pension in sports, and it's the greatest meritocracy in sports for all these things, right? Now, the 501c6 Corp also had some challenges. It meant that the PGA, for all intents and purposes, their job was to put on events for their members to showcase their skills and make money. They couldn't just go around and say, hey, Rory McIlroy or Dustin Johnson or whoever it is, you're the best player here. We're going to give you $20 million to show up this week. So that was restricting in a lot of ways. So that right there, that function of it being a charity and then having this member organization where they have hundreds of members they have to serve, made it right for the picking for disruption from something like LIV. Now, put that aside for a second. Now you have the public investment fund. So this is Saudi Arabia's public investment fund. It's close to $700 billion fund right now. It'll be $1 billion or $1 trillion fund. Sorry, 100 billion. Wow. Hard to get these numbers right. It's almost 700 billion right now, almost $1 trillion fund in the near future. Saudi Aramco, the biggest oil producer in the world, is obviously a key part of that. They are, and they have been for the last handful of years, actively been looking to do what many people have coined as sports washing. Sports washing is investing in mainly Western sport, whether it be the Premier League with Newcastle, whether it be NFL or NHL or NBA teams, which hasn't happened yet, or lesser sports, in order to normalize doing business with the Arab world, normalize doing business with Saudi Arabia. Now, what better sport in the world to do that with than golf, where you have really big corporate sponsors, you have all the biggest banks and telcos in the U.S. A big part of golf is this pro-am culture, where on the Tuesday and Wednesday before an event, you have the CEO of AT&T goes out there and plays with an important player and a sponsor. So golf seemed like a natural way for them to sports wash and get into the Western business community. And the structure of this 501c6 Corp allowed for the disruption to go in and then to pick off players. So they went in, LIV starts. We all got to know the history of LIV. They pick off players. Now what they've done is they really put the PGA Tour in a tough spot. And I think the reason that we have what we're calling a merger now, and it's not really, we'll talk about the structure of it is in a second, is because they left the PGA with no other option. I actually think that, and we can get into the moral high ground of it. We can get into all sorts of other stuff. But I think at the end of the day, golf is actually in a better spot right now than it's ever been from a financial standpoint. The Saudis kind of bullied their way into it. And at the end of the day, money talks. And they sat there and said, by all accounts, and there's been a couple of different news reports on this. I don't pretend to be a reporter on it, but from people I've talked to, that the Saudis openly said, we have $5 billion earmarked to run this thing. It doesn't need to make a cent for us. This is a marketing expense for the public investment fund. This is an opportunity for us to get in the Western world. And they eventually would have just bled the PGA Tour dry. There were accounts of the PGA Tour were spending $30 to $50 million a year in legal fees, fighting off those lawsuits with LIV. There were so many headwinds for the PGA. There was talk of them having sponsors leave because they essentially said, well, we got to up the purses to keep players. We got to double the sponsorship cost to do that. And a couple of people came back and said, thanks, but no thanks on the double sponsorship revenue. So a lot of headwinds for Jay Monahan and the PGA Tour, a lot of opportunity for the Saudis. You know, this is their way into Western business, and hard to chalk this up at anything but a win for them.
It really, really is. And you kind of touched on it, but I thought another key piece of this was all of the legal, all the lawsuits, all the legalese, all of that stuff goes away today. It's done. It's over.
Well, yes and no. I mean, the existing lawsuits are pencils down, but I don't think that we're necessarily over the goal line yet. This was announced as if it was a done deal. Let's not forget that the Department of Justice in the U.S. has an antitrust division. Antitrust division is out there to regulate monopolistic activity. Hard to not see this as a golf monopoly. I mean, the DP World Tour, formerly the European Tour, led by Canadian Keith Pelly. You have, which we'll maybe get to as well.
Yeah, we will.
Have the Saudi Aramco series, right? So they already have their own golf series. The LPGA Tour is not part of this announcement. Hard to believe the LPGA is not going to somehow be involved and scooped up in this. The Asian Tour is involved. So, you know, you do have a situation now where PGA members and players could say that there are no other places to play golf now. And this, you know, merger, this, you know, new business entity that's going to be created essentially is going to have a monopoly on the sport of golf. I don't know if the DOJ is going to think too kindly of that. I think that there's still a chance that this gets held up with antitrust regulation.
Held up or stopped?
Well, this is the thing, is that it's hard to tell what goes on in the United States when it comes to antitrust, because there's times when they seem to have, you know, pretty sharp teeth on it. When Disney purchased the Fox RSNs, they forced them to spin off those regional sports networks because they were going to have monopoly in sports. To be honest, I don't think that was a monopoly. I don't think that made any sense. They probably should have let Disney keep the RSNs because their streaming services getting involved in sports now. Really, they didn't have this like huge share of sport, but they had their teeth on that one. Then there's other tech regulation with Amazon and others where they don't seem to have any teeth at all. So anyone's guess on what's going to happen from an antitrust lawsuit. If I were a betting man, I kind of think that this goes through. I honestly think that there is enough money, and I don't know what the lobby situation is with the PGA Tour in Washington, but I don't think that Jay Monahan and Yasser Al-Rumayyan come out this strongly unless they're pretty confident the deal gets done. I mean, Yasser was saying that he's going to have it done in 3 weeks, which seems impossible.
Well, in North America, yes, but probably not in Saudi Arabia, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned a name, and it's more of a sidelight to me than anything, but that's Keith Pelly. Because Keith Pelly has, I don't know if you call him a legend, but almost there in Canada with his work at TSN, played a huge role in Sportsnet landing that big deal with the National Hockey League, and then kind of left and went to golf over in Europe, which was a little odd. What is his role? How did, you know, is he a big player in this, or is he just an add-on?
No, he's not a big.
Okay.
All due respect to Keith, he's not a big player in this. But I mean, the DP World Tour is a big winner of this, and to be honest, because between the LIV fight and the PGA Tour fight, there wasn't a lot of space left in the golf ecosystem for this European tour. You know, the DP World Tour technically owns the European interest in the Ryder Cup. What's going to happen now with that is up in the air as well. But to maybe further catalyze exactly what the new structure is going to be, and we're still learning exactly what this is going to be. But by all accounts, what will happen is that a new private company is being formed. This new private company is going to be chaired by Yasser, who is the chair of the Saudi Aramco, and they are going to invest X amount of money into this new corporation. Let's call it $5 billion, right? This new corporation is going to also ingest all of the commercial interests of pro golf, essentially. So all the PGA Tour's TV contracts and sponsorship deals and rights are all going to go in there. Same with DP World Tour, same with the existing LIV deals of whatever revenue there is there. And then the real question is, how is the rest of it going to sit outside? You know, the PGA Tour is not disappearing. It as a member organization still exists. The player pensions are still going to sit there. There's still going to be a membership process. And players do not today just drop right back in to be members of the PGA. It appears to be that there's going to be some kind of application process for those that have left, or they relinquished their membership cards. Same for the DP World Tour. They're going to have to somehow reapply and get back in. Hard to believe that guys like Dustin Johnson or Brooks Koepka are not going to just become members again. Right. Is there going to be some kind of you need to pay a penalty or a fee for leaving? There's a lot of talk on the flip side of that. Rory McIlroy came out this morning with his press conference and saying he expects that there'll be make goods for the guys that essentially hung their neck out and said, we're not going there, stood on the whole moral high ground just to have the Saudi money foisted on them anyways. So still a lot to learn in terms of the structure, but by the takeaway is that golf is no longer a non-for-profit public membership organization in North America. The PGA Tour, as we knew it, is no longer the same corporate structure. What golf now is powered by this private organization who of the Saudis are the majority investor of. So hard to take all of that away, even if Jay Monahan's supposed to stay on as CEO and head of golf operations for PGA, and Keith Pelley's going to stay on as CEO of DP World Tour. What's going to happen to Live is it'll probably fold away and not exist anymore.
Okay.
But hard to believe that this isn't essentially the public investment fund, Saudi Arabia, buying the interest of all of golf.
So a couple of key characters in this. Where's Greg Norman in all of this? Right?
Well, he's nowhere to be found. And I suspect that part of the terms of this negotiation from Jay with the PIF and with the interest that be in Saudi Arabia was Greg Norman needs to be out.
Okay.
He was not just, listen, he was an important force in starting.
He was the cult leader.
He was the cult leader, and he tried to start his own tour 25 years ago as well, when he was a younger player. He's hated the PGA Tour since day one. He's always thought that there should have been more money for the players, a different model. And I mean, we've been told, which is so funny, is because, Greg Norman in some ways, and some people could read this as Phil Mickelson and Greg Norman kind of being proven right. They said for a long time the PGA Tour is not an efficient structure. It doesn't benefit players enough. The PGA Tour came back and said, well, we have this charity organization. You have the best pension in sports. We put these events on for you, and we promote you and all this stuff. But they all said every other sport is a for-profit, private enterprise. Why aren't we? And the PGA Tour kept saying, well, it's impossible, can't be done. There was an attempt by something called the PGL even 3-4 years ago. Wouldn't even take a meeting. Jay Monahan, the PGA Tour, wouldn't even take a meeting with these guys to try to create a private golf league to work symbiotically with the PGA Tour. So after all these years of being told it can't happen, turns out with enough money it can happen, right? So somehow now it is happening, and Greg Norman and Phil Mickelson are kind of being proven correct here. But I will say that Greg is nowhere to be seen, right? He's not in the press release. He's not out in the public taking a victory lap. I think that he is being kind of cut out, and I'm sure that the PGA Tour and Jay Monahan in particular said that the terms of this deal mean that we'll never see Greg Norman again.
Let's talk about Jay Monahan, because I think he's kind of caught up in the two circles, the world of the business of this and then the public perception of all of this. He has certainly seceded the high ground. He has no moral high ground. But does that even matter? At the end of the day, he became kind of the butt of jokes, and everybody's ire was focused yesterday. But did he just do a deal for ultimately his employer, the PGA? And will he not get a golden handshake at some point to go away?
I think he probably will get a golden handshake to go away. He was the commissioner of professional golf, and his mandate, as everyone has a mandate, was to get the players paid, right? His job was to put on tournaments and make the players the most amount of money, whether it means increasing the purse size or whatever. So hard to say he hasn't done that here. This is going to mean there's more money in golf. There's more money for players. But I do think that from a public perception standpoint, he is going to see a lot of backlash. Already has seen a lot of backlash from players. And the players only meeting that happened yesterday here in Toronto at Oakdale.
It's fascinating.
Somehow the Canadian Open has become the epicenter of breaking news last year. So just a year ago today, to give people context, Monahan was on the broadcast with Jim Nantz. This is the peak of the Live versus PGA Tour stuff, invoking the 9/11 families and taking this moral stance against the Saudi Arabia and the PIF. One of the all-time 180s here by him. So he's certainly ceded any kind of credibility from that perspective. But listen, from a business perspective, hard to see that he probably doesn't walk away with some money here. And but I don't think he'll be the CEO for much longer. I think there's going to be players that will never want to speak with him again because they're going to feel as though they were lied to. And there's going to be players who are genuinely going to be asking, I was offered $100 million last year by Liv. I said no because you told me that if I left for Liv, I'd never play again. We're never going to do business with them. Will Zalatoris is a good example. 130 million here up on the screen. So those guys are going to be saying, "Where's my make good? Like, where's my money?" Because apparently we're just going to do business with them anyways. The money's going to go into this golf pool, but I could have taken the money. So I actually think there's probably going to be some reparations here. I think there's going to be some existing PGA Tour members that are made whole to these numbers that we see here. I don't think so.
That?
Well, this is the thing. This is we're in a new era of golf. The one thing that other pro sports has is you have like a NHLPA or NBAPA. You have a player association, then you have teams, and you have salary cap and contract negotiations. Golf was always, in a lot of ways, the easiest sport because it was performance based. So the purse this week is 20 million, and first place gets this, and second place gets this, and so on and so forth. Now you're going to have people negotiating all kinds of, well, I move the needle when people come, and in this tournament I want to be paid this, and if you have infinite funds, quote unquote, from the Saudis, perhaps that doesn't matter. But at some point, the buck is going to stop here in terms of how you measure success in golf. And I think what's going to happen is golf is going to turn into, there's going to be a purse every week and guys are going to pay for a purse, but there's also all of a sudden going to be these kind of like baseline contracts. You're going to have like a league minimum type situation where you're going to have, okay, once you're on the tour, you have a league minimum of X $100,000 a year per tournament you show up to. There's going to be bonuses. Then on top of that, you get the playing performance based on the purse. So golf's going to start looking a lot more like other pro sports from that perspective.
And I'm glad you brought that up because that was part of the storyline yesterday. I think Rory said today that he was given a heads up, but only an hour or so before. Like there was a lot of people that were blindsided and had their phones blow up. Can you just talk about Tiger and all of this? Because you can't talk golf without talking Tiger. We had that graphic up. He turned down $800 million to go to the Live Tour. Tiger is not the player he used to be. Tiger is not healthy enough to be the player he used to be. Does he still get that? Not that, but
I don't think so. I don't think Tiger is going to get. I'm sure he's going to be paid here, and there'll be something, but it's not going to be nearly that.
Yeah,
it's interesting though. Like if you think back to, if this had happened 10 years ago, or maybe even more, when Tiger was really in his prime. I don't think this would have happened, to be honest. I think what would have happened is the PGA Tour would have been able to stand up a fight because I think if you read between the lines, what was happening is that the Live Tour was saying, we have $5 billion to fight you on golf, and we're going to slowly buy golf and we'll bleed you dry on it. And PGA Tour said, okay, what do we have to do to keep players? They doubled the purse sizes. They said we're going to do more of these elevated events. They created this, player impact program called the PIP, which essentially was like a made up thing to pay the top players based on social media exposure, whatever that meant. But if this had happened years ago and you go around to the sponsors, you go on to Charles Schwab or John Deere and you say, listen, guys, it's either stick with us or you're going to lose Tiger to the Saudis. I think it's a lot easier to ask to go from a $10 million check to a $20 million check. But I think it was obviously falling on flat ears. Like they were losing sponsors. And I think the bean counters, the tour were saying, listen, it all sounds great to say we're going to double the purse sizes and we're going to do more designated events and we're going to fight the Saudis, but it's not adding up to $5 billion here. Right? Like we're not able to keep up with the infinite money, and it's a drop in the bucket for them. So this is like, if you've been watching Succession, this is a bear hug, right? They came in with just an over the top amount of money that solved all the PGA Tour's problems on paper. If you were an MBA student and you just take the emotion out of it and take the names out of it, and you saw this business problem, you'd say, well, this is the no-brainer. This is the way out. This is the obvious solution. You get rid of all the lawsuits, you get a huge influx of money, you keep your members, and you stabilize the sport for the foreseeable future. The catch is kind of at what cost. Now you're squarely in business with the PIF and Saudi Arabia when it comes to golf.
Adam, that's the rub, isn't it, in all of this? If it was just a straight business deal and it was not a pro sport thing, it's just another headline in the business section. But sport always evokes that emotion, and the emotion runs high. Let me, again, too early, I'm sure. What are the possibilities, though, of the restructuring? You mentioned the RBC Canadian Open's on this year, or this week. Is there a potential that tour that no longer gets the best golfers, that it could become a sub-tour event?
No, I think the Canadian Open's actually a good space. I think what's going to happen, so they're going to play out the rest of the Live season this year, and then they've said that they're going to review Live Golf's business structure and see where they go from there. that's code for Live is shutting down, right? So Live is done by all intents and purposes. We're going to get back to traditional, golf tournaments being held up. But what we don't have anymore is we're not stuck with this weird member organization structure with all these bylaws to pay people. So you're going to get more innovative formats. I think we're going to see more smaller field and maybe match play events, perhaps more team events, things that, again, you couldn't do these smaller field events. You had to have a certain size field with a cut line to satisfy the membership organization. That's really not a factor anymore. I think you're going to have more appearance-based fees. I think you're certainly going to have some events in the Arab world. I mean, look at Formula One, look at any other sport that's gotten involved. I mean, there's going to be some kind of Saudi Open for sure. It's going to become a bigger part of the schedule. So look for that. And there's probably going to be big purses to get out there, right? They'll probably want to make that the fifth major. So there's that element to it. But I don't think that this is actually, again, nuts and bolts. I have a feeling that in a couple of years, similar to how it is in the Premier League. I mean, the Premier League is kind of, fans have been able to create a bit of cognitive dissonance between who owns the club and how the league operates. But the Premier League is flush with Saudi cash as well, right? And people have kind of moved past that. And I think in a couple of years, the golf is going to be golf again, and there's going to be big events, and there might be a couple more in Riyadh, but beyond that, it's going to be professional golf, and the majors are going to be important, and there's just going to be a lot more cash.
So let's spend a little time and dig down on sports washing, because for me, it was kind of the first time I heard it was a year ago applied in this particular case, that, you have a regime that has, skeletons in the closet, figuratively and literally, and they're trying to put on a brave face by, again, adapting to a North American sport or another sport. And I mean, we haven't even touched on what they're doing with their own soccer programs and the money they're spending there. I mean, it's not just one sport. Morally, where are we at here? And that's an individual question. It's important. It's important to me, but I don't know if I'm representative. Do people now say, "Ooh, I've got to make a choice. Either I'm supporting this regime who owns golf, or I'm going to support Rory and Mickelson and all that"? Is there a downside to the morality play in sport?
It's a challenging question. I mean, sports washing has been around for a long time.
Sure,
I mean,
it has.
The FIFA World Cup's a great example of it, right? They've been taking money since their inception. I mean, there was a World Cup in the Mussolini's Italy in the 30s, right?
In Olympics in Hitler's Germany.
Olympics in Hitler's Germany. So sport has been a way for questionably moral figures to kind of normalize their activities kind of since the dawn of professional sport.
Yep.
So it's really come into focus because the Saudis have in particular had a strategy, and it's open strategy by them to do this, to normalize relations with them. It's hard to find a sport that doesn't have some influx of it. Hard to find even a North American business from Uber to Walmart that doesn't have some influx. So I think that a lot of fans are able to create a bit of compartmentalization between Live Golf, which is like a Saudi league, and it feels as though you're openly doing PR for the Saudis, versus the PGA Tour has a business which has some shares that are owned by the Saudis. And there's a couple Saudi people who are, investing in it, and they're on the chairs of the board. But for all intents and purposes, there's a U.S. CEO, and it's still our same U.S. Open, and it's still our same, John Deere, and it's still our same events. I think a lot of fans are going to be pretty happy just to pretend it's not happening. Now,
I agree.
I don't know if that is right. I don't know if that's the best thing that we should be doing. I think for me, it certainly makes me think a little bit more about exactly how things are working. But you saw Formula One's growth over the last 5 years, especially with young Americans who presumably lean a little bit more left or a little bit more socially conscious. And they've been able to totally overlook that. And they say, I love Verstappen and I love Lewis Hamilton. But that entire league is really run by the Saudis, right? Saudi Aramco, and they have multiple events in Azerbaijan all over the world. So it is a challenge, but I think if I were to just put the morality aside for a second, think of it as a sports business story, I don't think that it's going to stop anybody from supporting golf or being interested in pro golf.
No, And to me, the next level of that same question is, okay, that's the individual, but what about the business? What about the potential sponsor? Because we have at times seen moral issues or societal issues that have caused, Canadian. I think we talked about this the first time you came on. Canadian Tire has dedicated itself to gender, even its sponsorship money by 2026. Is there any sense that there's any kind of backlash coming from sponsors or cable providers, but broadcasters or anything like that?
It's a good question. I don't think that there will be backlash to this from that perspective. I think there's enough kind of complication to it. I mean, the example that a lot of people use is right now in North America and most of the Western world, it's June. It's Pride Month. I mean, I see that you have, the tape on your microphone, and you'll see a lot of companies across North America and Europe change their, brand identity and logos to a rainbow color flag. If you go onto Mercedes website here, you're going to see some messaging about LGBTQ and about Pride Month. But if you go onto Mercedes Middle East, you're not going to see any of that. Right. No. So I think that corporations will have their cake and eat it too on it. And I think that most fans will as well.
Okay, so let's continue down that. What about the broadcast implications? You mentioned that all of the contracts will be absorbed. I think the last time you were on, we were kind of, talking how poorly the Live draws on CW. It's not a great TV deal. That's not something they've been able to capture, but that's something the PGA has.
Yeah, I mean, the PGA just locked up their media rights, right? Their TV rights are locked up with CBS and with NBC or with ESPN. Sorry. So I mean, again, I think this is going to be great for TV. To be honest, it's going to be good for the league. All of a sudden, you get Dustin Johnson and Cam Smith back in the mix. You no longer have this kind of negative narrative about a challenger league, as you were referring back to when the NHL had a challenger league. I mean, it's not the World Hockey, so it's not good for anyone, right? It's not good for anyone to have this kind of distraction league on the side. So I think that this is actually a win. I think the broadcasters are going to be quite happy. This makes CBS's job much easier. We are the home of golf now. We have all the biggest events. I think it makes the tour's job a lot easier. Now we have this symbiotic relationship with the LPGA, or not the LPGA, the DP World Tour and the PGA Tour now. We're all in the same boat. I wouldn't be surprised if part of the make goods here are that big players, important players, are going to start getting shares in this new private corporation. I mean, sky's kind of the limit how you can structure the business now. It's no longer this easy, we have rights, we sell you the rights. There's going to be more business doing it. Perhaps in the future, someone like Amazon comes in and wants to have the broadcast for golf. Well, okay, if you want to have the broadcast rights for golf, you pay us a broadcast fee. Also, you have to fork over $100 million or $500 million investment into our ex-golf entity, whatever it's going to be called. I'm sure it'll have a terrible name like Golf Group LLC or something like that. But it'll be, this is now just another lever for them to pull in terms of the corporate structure.
So the Netflix show that is going on right now that the PGA launched, is there any chance this is going to be part of that?
Absolutely. So Chad Munn, who is the director of it, he's the showrunner for it. He's been tweeting out this week. He said, trust me, cameras are rolling. The Netflix cameras are in Toronto as we speak. They have been rolling all season. The season 2 was greenlit already. Were they in that players only meeting? God, I hope so. I really hope they were.
Can you imagine?
But by all accounts, there's going to be some absolutely incredible. This is the thing. This is actually going to be great theater. Come this time next year when Full Swing's coming out and we're talking about it. It's honestly one of the best things for golf from that perspective. So yeah, we're going to see Full Swing season 2, and it's going to have, by all accounts, some great behind the scenes footage of the news breaking. And again, these players didn't know. I mean, Rory mentioned that he heard an hour before, but 99% of players, you had, people like Colin Morikawa and Justin Thomas coming out on Twitter and saying, I found out like the rest of you on Twitter. I just saw a tweet. So it really was surprising breaking news for everyone involved, and no one was consulted.
Well, and talk about the competition a little bit, but I just happened to be listening to Overdrive in TSN in Toronto and the radio, and they were at the RBC Open, and they were kind of going minute by minute. And at one point, Monahan was doing a Zoom call, and he was in Toronto, and just the day itself will lend for a movie, a book somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure there are already some books being optioned, and the Netflix series will be great. But this happened 24 hours ago. We are still very much trying to figure out exactly what this shakes out like. I still think, Rob, I'd say that we're not over the finish line yet. I know it feels that way, like it's over and done with, but there might be some fandangling with the DOJ and antitrust. I think there might really be a challenge here because it's hard to look at this and not say that one company, this Golf LLC, whatever it's going to be, that's going to be majority owned by the PIF, owns all of golf. Like, I just don't know how you can say anything otherwise than golf's been taken private by the Saudis.
Yeah. Well, to that point, though, you say 24 hours, but that's our attention span, right? That's the news cycle. No, it's good. That story's over. They're done. They're moving. I do want to go back to the first thing you said, which is nobody saw this coming. How did they accomplish that? How does this not some fragrance of this leak out?
Monahan mentioned that he had 2 other execs with him on the negotiating team, a few people from the PIF side. So I actually am quite astonished. I mean, nothing gets as far over a line with it. Some leaking, even strategically leaking things in order to, get a pulse on it, which partially is why I think this was so buttoned up, because Monahan must have known that this is going to, he's going full about face here, right? It's going to make him look awful. So he needed to make sure he had a deal done before anybody heard about it. Yeah. But again, like it's shocking that this gets done with no one hearing about it. And again, a little confusing because the PGA Tour is this member organization. So, technically the PGA Tour players, and there's a board within there, policy advisor board, I think it's called, needs to approve this transaction as well. So again, like, we aren't actually over the finish line, despite how it was presented with the press conference yesterday.
So one last one on Monahan, and then I want to move to some other adjacent stories. But can you explain his authority? Who does he report to, or is he kind of Roger Goodell-like? Is he Gary Bettman-like? How do we explain his existence? Yeah,
I mean, he's the commissioner of the PGA Tour. Now he's going to be the CEO of this new Golf LLC Corp. So he reports to the players, and during this whole PGA Tour lawsuit situation and back and forth, a lot of the players were rightfully a little frustrated. They're saying, hey, the tour management, the executives there don't tell us anything. We have no say. And Monahan would say, well, what are you talking about? It's a member organization. You guys have a vote on everything. But, he was kind of the CEO of golf, the commissioner of golf. But unlike serving the owners, there were no owners. So really, he served the membership of the PGA, right? So anybody who's a PGA Tour card holder, voted on his powers on a term. I think he was on a 5-year term, so similar to a lot of CEOs or public sector employees in executive positions. So that was kind of his authority. To me, it's a great question in terms of, does he actually have the ability to do this deal without sign off? The answer is no. The members have to actually approve this. But, I'm sure in the players only meeting, and as it's been revealed over the last 2 days, the narrative is that, listen, we don't have any other option. We're paying $30 to $50 million in legal fees fighting these guys. They've told us they're going to fight us forever. We're having sponsors say they can't pony up double the amount of money in order to cover the increased purses that we promised you. Plus this deal is an influx of money, and everyone's a winner. Everyone's going to get paid, and problems are solved. I mean, you guys as the members were paying those legal fees, right? You're paying into those legal fees. So, I think you're going to have the players sign off on this. There's going to be some griping about where I get my bonus from and why am I not getting paid my live money. I bet you there'll be some people who do get paid their live money, and they're going to get some portion of it. But at the end of the day, I can't see the members turning this down.
One of the parts of the last 12 months that I never paid close enough attention to, so I'm hoping you did. How does this now impact golf equipment, sponsorship? Who was frozen out of whom, and who may have merged with whom? Is there ramifications in that industry?
I think there probably will be. I think in the short run, I mean, listen, there's a lot of all these different tops. The golf's been crazy the last couple of years. I mean, there was a whole push from the USGA about rolling the ball back that received a whole bunch of pushback, if you can recall. And there was amateur golf talk about the OEMs, the official equipment manufacturers, and what they were going to do in terms of having a split stream of having a professional grade of club versus a non-professional. Or are they going to roll the driver back? And then can they sponsor live athletes? You saw DJ, he had a big deal with Adidas and RBC. Those deals got canceled. Do those deals essentially get re-signed in the future? Probably, if he's back on. So again, I think if I was sitting in Mizuno or Titleist's office and I saw this news, I would have said this is quite surprising and crazy, but quietly celebrated to myself. I said this makes my job a lot easier. Now you just tell me who I need to cut a check to for sponsorship. I can work freely with any athletes I need to. Actually, it might make things even easier because now I'm doing a deal with Golf Group LLC instead of doing a deal over here with PGA, DP World Tour, Saudi Aramco Series, whatever's going on in Asia. You can now just kind of have one central home for golf.
This could be one of the biggest rebrandings in the history of sport, couldn't it?
Yeah, but I don't think we're going to lose the brand. I think PGA
Tour
you don't.
Is
still going to be. No, I think we're still going to have. I think the DP World Tour is still going to exist. It might change sponsor names at some point. It might become the Aramco Series, to be honest.
Okay.
We're still going to have the PGA Tour. I think in a couple of years, you're still going to have the John Deere Classic. You're still going to have the RBC Canadian Open.
Well, I thought that. I just didn't know if it would be
I still think
you're
going to have. I think you're still going to have the the PGA Tours, the Premier League, and you're going to have a European Tour league, and you're maybe going to still have an Asian Tour or an Eastern Tour of some kind that gets formed. Will the sponsor names change? Perhaps. But I think that, for continuity's sake, the sports washing works best if you make sure to keep the top line brands the same, right? So I don't think when you come in and buy Newcastle, you don't change the name of Newcastle. You just make sure you own it and you can do the business deals in the background.
Okay, so I apologize. I misunderstood you. I thought that it was going to have a whole new name, which it then would be the biggest rebranding in sport.
then it truly would be. Behind the scenes, there's going to be someone underwriting the checks with a new numbered company name or Golf Group LLC for sure. But outward facing, consumer facing, you're still going to be looking at the same old PGA Tour, the same silhouette. So
2 more for you. Both of them are ticklish. You mentioned the LPGA earlier. The LPGA and the PGA, as we know, are not the same. They're different. They're completely different. You have a kind of an awakening in Western culture, North America, about women's sports and equity that is not shared by the Saudi regime. Is there going to be external pressure from broadcast, from sponsors, or will the Saudis themselves just see? It seems to me the benefit here would be to bring them into the house, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think you probably will. And it's been complicated with women's golf because they have had this relationship with Aramco. There's been the Aramco series in the LPGA, and some female players have spoken out against Saudi Arabia and Aramco, and they've also rightfully said that it's a big chunk of money and that the women don't have the opportunity to play for nearly the amount of money the men do. And, who are you to tell us that we can't go and try to get a big paycheck from golf? So there's been kind of a pinching your nose and swallowing it with a lot of the LPGA stuff. I think that, again, this structure is going to make it easier for everyone to essentially, you're going to move the Saudi of it all into the background where they own the business dealings, but they're not going to be out front facing as much. You're probably going to see Aramco around, but beyond Aramco as a brand, you're not going to see, I don't think, a lot of the Saudi influence on the actual courses or on the actual athletes. And I think what could very well happen here is the LPGA could become part of this corporate structure, become part of this kind of global golf entity. You're still going to have the LPGA Tour, but now all of a sudden you can start pooling together the TV rights. So one of the things that used to happen is there'd be, the PGA Tour and the LPGA were doing some negotiating together on TV rights to help each other. Well, now your business can also be kind of sharing on the back end from a profit share perspective. So again, this actually could be really great for the LPGA. I think you could see a lot more elevation. You could see more cross-pollination. I mean, a lot of golf fans, myself included, have called for, why isn't there a mixed team event that happens every year that's a big event? I think it would be an enormous draw. And I think that you could see that happen now because golf has just gotten really flat.
Well, think of where you're at right now. You don't think the RBC Canadian Open with Brooke Henderson's participation in some, because we saw that with Annika Sorenstam, 2 decades ago, right? Kind of kicking the tires. Michelle Wee kicking the tires a little bit there. We should get to that point at some point, some mixed event.
Yeah, and they have their team event, the Solheim Cup, I think it's called, which is similar to the Ryder Cup. Yeah. I mean, could you create a net new, gender neutral cup that has, each team you got to have 10 female, 10 male players, maybe by country, maybe by sponsor, maybe by region. All of a sudden it opens up a lot of possibility. I mean, getting rid of this, public entity side of golf means that sky's the limit, and that the team element of LIV, which is the one thing that people thought was kind of interesting, right? The one thing that people thought was kind of interesting was that it wasn't just a 72-hole stroke play event. Well, now all of a sudden you can start experimenting with formats like that. And I think you're going to start seeing some interesting innovation in golf where not every week is a cut line, 150 players and 72-hole event.
My last one for you, and I hope you appreciate where it comes from. We've already established I'm far more emotional than you are. You're far more analytical than I am. But it's hard for me not to look at this, look at Elon Musk buying Twitter, look at just, the Ottawa Senators going for $1 billion. It just feels like that, the root of all of this in a capitalist society comes back to dollars and money. And it's that you can solve anything, like anything you want to solve. You don't like what's being said, buy the company. You want to change everybody's perception of you, buy a sport. Is this good? Is this healthy? Are we okay with this? Is this just the natural evolution of society? And we'll talk about this in our history books like we talk about the Industrial Revolution?
Well, I mean, that's an interesting question, Rob. And I think like money can kind of buy a lot of things in today's world. I do think pro sport has been more and more revealing themselves to be a for-profit, money-driven enterprise, just kind of dressed up as an emotional, we support the team and it's a local endeavor, where in reality it's become more and more of a, you get private equity groups involved with ownership of multiple teams in competitive cities. I mean, the idea that the same person owns two different, sports teams in two different cities that are kind of rivals from each other. Think about like Redbird Capital, the Pittsburgh and Fenway Group and all those.
Right.
That does kind of make you feel a little bit, I don't know if I want to say dirty, but just a little bit. It does kind of suck some of the imagination out of what you'd like to think pro sport is all about. The one kind of maybe glimmer of hope is, or at least story today, that maybe it doesn't always just come down to dollars and cents, was Messi allegedly turning down more money from the Saudis to sign with Inter Miami and MLS today. Now, was that because he's an altruistic guy, doesn't like doing business with the Saudis? I highly doubt that. He's done appearances with them in the past. He's going to be paid lots of money. But you can't necessarily buy something. There's something to be said about, maybe he wanted to live in the United States and he wanted to have, that kind of impact on the world. He wanted to play on the biggest stage in front of the biggest audience he could. And that wasn't going to be in the Saudi league. That was going to be, in North America and in a US market. So, although obviously smaller soccer audience than PSG or Barca, but I think a new audience. And it'd be interesting to hear from him what he thinks about that, how he thinks about, okay, why didn't you take the most money? I mean, listen, there's a lot of things to be said about Rory and Tiger, who turned down these enormous sums of money because they, believed in the history of the PGA Tour.
Absolutely.
So there are still some people out there who believe in that kind of history of sport. And I do think that this, we might get to a tipping point here. I will say, like, credit, and this is hard to say, but credit to the NFL. The NFL has said we don't want corporations owning our teams. They always say that they want private individuals, wealthy individuals, or families to own their teams, because they don't want someone just counting with dollars and cents. They want someone who cares about the city and cares about the team winning, and they feel as though you need a personal owner to do that. Here in Toronto, I don't think the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan was a very loved ownership group. That's the most faceless owner you can have. And yeah, Rogers and Bell now, for all intents and purposes, along with Larry Tannenbaum, not necessarily any better, but I think it might make some people think twice about, is it all about getting the highest dollar value for your sporting endeavor, or is there some kind of soul that is lost when you kind of make it a faceless, nameless organization?
I always struggled with this idea that LIV, and they even said it yesterday, this is about growing the game. This is about
that. Yeah, that's the biggest. Yeah, that was the biggest con ever. Anybody who kind of bought into we want to do, their tag on golf, but louder. We want to grow the game. We want to challenge the norms. They're going to wear shorts. It's a team thing. Like, that's all nonsense. What it was all about was that the Saudis wanted to do business in North America. Yep. They thought golf was a good way to do it. Greg Norman teed it up for them. Yep. They paid Phil. They paid these guys a drop in the bucket for them, but a lifetime of money for those players. And they won. They got their way into golf now. And now, you're going to see, Saudi Arabia involved in golf for the foreseeable future.
Before I let you go, what are you keeping your eyes on? What's I mean, this is obviously a huge story, and I appreciate you jumping on, but what else is going on out there right now that's got you attention?
Oh, I mean, listen, interesting news story, from this week goes back to our RSN conversation. The LA Kings, they don't have a regional sports broadcast partner for next NHL season. That's a big market. They won the Cup recently. It's Los Angeles. They had Gretzky. They don't have a regional broadcaster because of the tumultuous nature of the regional broadcast business right now. And they just let go a well-loved play-by-play announcer.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't think that they're going to be alone. I think we have a serious problem on our hands in terms of local broadcast rights. And I think that sports leagues should be a little careful about getting the most dollar value for your league by slicing and dicing it too many different ways. I still think that sports should be as much as possible in front of a paywall. It should be free. It should be as easy as possible for people to find your game. From the history of sports, from horse racing and boxing and baseball on the radio, it was always free to get on the radio and listen to it.
Yep.
Broadcast TV, you grab the rabbit ears and it's free, and it was supported by ticket sales and advertisement. And it's great to get money from Apple or Amazon or as many different cable networks as you can. But at some point, the fans just say, I don't give a crap. And I worry that that's going to happen to teams like the LA Kings, where what are the LA Kings? The 10th most important team in California, maybe. You know, you have
in California, yeah,
in the state of California, maybe the 10th most important. I mean, no offense to the LA Kings and no offense to hockey fans, but you got a lot of NFL teams and you got baseball teams and basketball. Like, you got a lot of teams out there. So if you make it hard to find Kings games, do you maybe just the Kings aren't cool anymore? Maybe hockey suffers. And I think that smaller markets and non-Canadian NHL markets are going to have a real hard time. You got to find a way to get people to your game. I think getting on broadcast TV and making it free for people is a good way to do that, or free over the internet. I think finding a way to get in front of a paywall online is important, and find a way to make the money back elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that story up, because I saw it too. And, you know, where my mind went is that give now Sportsnet cover to eliminate their radio crews and just do simulcasts. Because you can point to that as it's happening in the industry. It's not the same. It's not the same.
It's certainly not the same. But yes, they merged the radio and the TV, right? It's all one big thing now. And I don't know if that's going to happen here. I mean, I hope it doesn't. And I hope that sports still becomes kind of it's really the last remaining monoculture when we have on broadcast. I mean, when it comes to, we were looking at, working in our office talking about some of the biggest broadcast events that have happened. And you look at, the season or series finale of Seinfeld or Friends or MASH, MASH, 100+ million, Cheers, 70 million viewers, Friends and Seinfeld, 50 or 60 million viewers each. The only thing that gets even close to those now is sport, right? And Super Bowl does really good, but also, other big sporting events are the only thing that draw everyone together, are a common water cooler topic. And I do think that is a thing you don't want to lose if you're sports. Would you, if you're doing a scripted television show, would you prefer a few 100,000 really hardcore fans that pay you to watch the show? Maybe that's what you want if you're a niche scripted television show about a very specific topic that there's only a couple 100,000 fans for. But I think sports is built and made to be for the masses. It's so that Hockey Night in Canada we watched with a 6-year-old or with a 60-year-old or with a 100-year-old all sitting there in the same room together. And I do think that that if you make it more for people to find your sport or find sport in general, it's going to lose its place in the monoculture.
You are the best. Adam, thank you for this. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Like I said, the story itself is juicy. It's just
listen,
don't come along like this.
It will not be going anywhere either. I think you're going to hear more about it, and it's interesting that Canadian Open was the backdrop both this time last year when the shoe really dropped with Monahan on TV, and here we are again with Monahan at Oakdale Golf and Country.
It's crazy. Thank you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Adam Seaborn, sports business analyst for the Nation Network and from Playmaker Capital, kind enough to join us. I don't know what I would say in podcast terms is short notice, and I appreciate it. Brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years, 1946, if you're looking for the be exact. 1946, they opened their first set of doors at their first store here in Calgary. They now have 4 locations. Only one, though, is open right now, and that's McLeod Trail by Chinook Center. For the summer. The other 3 will open up when the snow comes in the fall. So make sure you check them out. We are live in the Oodle Noodle studio. We bring the heat. Buttered chicken, mac cheese, Kung Pao noodles, Bangkok pad thai, classic. Oof. Vegetarian, gluten-free options. 2 locations in Calgary and area. One is in Airdrie, 105 Main Street North. The other one is 1244 17th Avenue Southwest here in Calgary. Both offer pickup and delivery. We will turn our attention to basketball in just a couple of moments. Get you caught up on a couple of things. Home opener for the Calgary Stampeders tomorrow. The CFL kicks off. Do we have CFL news to announce? Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Okay.
I know you're.
I'm itching.
Yeah,
I'm itching. When I can, let me know. We'll announce it. Thanks, Jack. The NHL, by the way, will not be playing tonight. They've chosen to wait till tomorrow. It is Vegas leading Florida 2-0. It hasn't. If you're worried about the scores haven't been close. The games haven't been terribly entertaining, but lots of 10-minute misconducts. So if you're into that, this is the series for you. We did have a 3-way trade in the old National Hockey League yesterday. Columbus, Philadelphia, and the Kings. Provorov ends up with Columbus. So the Blue Jackets speeding up the rebuild, I suppose. And the only other thing that I did want to mention is, and we will probably talk some Blue Jays here in the coming weeks, I would suspect. Houston and Toronto currently playing a set in a series in Toronto, but Alex Manoah was assigned to Single A complex, Dunedin's complex. So he who came into the season expected to be the ace, expected to be the number one guy, has struggled mightily. As a matter of fact, that's even really being that's not even being fair. It's just fallen off. Is it Rick Ankiel like almost, or Rich Ankiel? It's almost like that a couple of decades ago. So we will watch that one with great interest. And again, the Liv story, did want to say a little bit about this because I get it. Like I kind of, watch what's going on the streams and stuff like that. And I got my own answer. Like, do people care about sports washing? Some, me, but most don't. I brought it up. You lose as soon as you bring up sport. We're going to talk about sports washing now. No, don't care. And I guess that's fine. It's a consumer thing. I mean, you watch what you want to watch. You enjoy what you want to enjoy. You're the one that has to answer any kind of questions about it. You saw a lot of that yesterday with this particular topic. Like, a lot of hypocrisy. A lot of things have been said about, the Saudis, and then other people came out and said, yeah, but aren't you going to be mad at the other business? I read the state of Arizona has signed over their water rights to Saudi Arabia. So there's bigger stories than sports that involve the Saudis and our friends to the south and the rest of the world. But it's that whole idea of, more morality in sport. There is no morality in professional sport, is there? I mean, we saw that. The hypocrisy, absolute hypocrisy of Monahan. But understand his job. What is Jay Monahan's job? To keep the PGA alive, to make it work, to pay the players. He did that yesterday. I was saying to Jack off the air, pretty big golden handshake coming for this guy. He's not going to retire and have to live on food stamps. Jay Monahan will be okay. So much so they could probably hire somebody to care about his hypocrisy. He doesn't have to bother. He'll hire somebody to do that. But we are losing something in all of this. And I know that that's for some in our audience, a socialist take, a communist take, or whatever. We're all supposed to love money, and who doesn't love money? Well, clearly, some of us, just the way we dress. Having said that, it is overwhelming how much money has involved every part of sport. The food and beverage prices, ticket prices, what's a bargain? I can look through this camera right now and I can tell I'm talking to a half dozen parents who have their kids in spring hockey and, strolled into their local equipment store and seen skates for $1,200. I've seen sticks for $600 and that sort of thing. It's hard. It's hard to disconnect the dollar figures and the dollars from the sports we love, the sports we play, the sports we want to follow. It's sometimes it's overwhelming. And one of those days was definitely yesterday. But a big story. It caught everybody flat. The reaction to the reaction has been kind of fun in this one. You don't normally get that. I don't know which days stand out for you. This reminded me a little bit, certainly a bigger story, but it reminded me of the day that that they made the 2 trades in the big free agent signing when Stamkos went into free agency, came back, and he signed with Tampa, and Subban got traded for Weber, and then there was another big deal. I think was that Taylor Hall got traded that day to Jersey. Is that right?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. Oh, Adam Larson, Taylor Hall. Yeah, that's right. So that day I'll never forget, except I have to ask you if I remembered it correctly. But for the most part, I remember it. It's just one of those days that's going to stand out in the calendar for you. Is where were you when? Where were you when the golf world changed? And it is hard today to wrap your head around that the end game in this might be that a political arm of a government in the Middle East will own the game of golf. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Coming up on Friday, Darren Haynes is going to join us. I mentioned the CFL game. Darren will have worked the game the night before and then is going to join us. I believe I need some help over here, Jack. I think the Surge are trying to get a hold of us here.
Okay.
So we need to resend the coach the link. So we'll get that's again, when I get involved in the chain, that can be an issue. So we'll get Nelson the coach, the link, I should say. We'll get Nelson the link. He's the coach. Yes. Okay, we got that. All right, we're covered. This is when you throw to a commercial break and you play a few records, but we're not going to do that. Darren Haynes will be at the game tomorrow night. And he's also got some thoughts on the Flames, so we'll talk to him. Monday, Wednesday next week, guest host Danny Austin in. Danny Austin, I've got some stuff that I'm going to do with friends. I didn't say that earlier, so I'm going to say it now. I got some stuff I'm going to do with some friends. So Monday, Wednesday next week, Danny Austin. And the next Friday is we've got our guest. We're good. Next Friday, both Peter Marr and Eric Tahachuk on the same show. So lock up everything. I mean, just batten down the hatches. All hell may break loose there. All right. Our next guest brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. 76 years in Calgary, as we mentioned. Currently, the summer location, McLeod Trail by Chinook Center. Before we bring on our next guest, I want to play a little clip. I saw this on the weekend. As I said, full disclosure, I'm working on some community initiatives for the Surge. So that had really nothing to do on the basketball side or the basketball operations side. So I love this clip. Can we play this clip before we bring our guest on, please?
You guys know that my job as a coach is to be a completely crazy every day in practice and a calm as during the game. During the practice, the players never feel the urgency of the game. And during the game, the players never remember the importance of practice. I want to change that for you. I want you to respect practice. Respect it the way because it gets you ready for the game. Respect it. Like, damn, I'm so glad we put in that situation.
Love that clip. It gives me a little bit of insight in our next guest, Nelson Terroba, the head coach of the Calgary Surge, 3-1 Calgary Surge, who will host the Ottawa Blackjacks on Friday at Winsport, joins us. Coach, how are you?
Rob, thank you for having me today. Sorry for the little delay here, but appreciate you having me. And I'm here coming to you from MNP, the training home of the Surge. We're very excited about being here at MNP.
And what do you think of MNP?
Fantastic. You know, this is we were one of the big worries for us and big concerns was trying to find a great practice facility for our guys. This place is amazing. I'm sure everyone here in the city knows about it. It was new to me, but we've got a great access to the gym here. The people here are taking care of us, and we really appreciate it.
I like the natural light. I mean, I'm a little weird that way, but it's nice to have some light, isn't it?
For sure. And the place it's really impressive. I mean, huge place. And I'm sure everyone in Calgary knows about it, but it's one of the most amazing complexes I've been into in terms of just, you see the light behind us and the tent, but we've got the private gym in the back. So we're very fortunate to be here.
I played the clip. As I said, I haven't had a chance to watch it practice. I've only watched it on the sidelines, but it was interesting for me because it gives a little insight. And that's what I really want to talk to you about. This is not like regular coaching. This is not an 8-9 month season. This is a short season. Hell, it's not a month since you met these guys and you've already played 4 games.
Yeah.
What is that like from your standpoint? What are the keys, I guess, for you to get off to a good start and get everybody on the same page?
Well, I think the keys are number one, that we start building our language, our shared language, right? How do we catalog things on defense? How do we catalog things on offense? How do we speak the same language as the first order of operations? And then the second thing is just getting them to understand our system. In addition to the certain system of talk, there's our system of defensive coverages and our system of offense, and how we kind of keep our flow going. So it's really about systems introduction and implementation is the big key right now.
But are you really introducing that to two teams, your players and your coaches?
Yeah, we are this year, but the coaches have been amazing. Our coaching staff is fantastic. We got Will Rooney's our lead assistant. He's got great experience in the CEBL, won a championship last year in the league as an assistant. Kyle Landry is here at UFC. Great assistant coach. He's the lead coach there. Terrell Murray, I've known for years, and he's one of our assistants. And we got a bunch of other ones that are helping us out as far as video and everything else. But our staff's been amazing.
What about that language for the players? Will they know bits and pieces of it? Is it unique to you and your staff? How much of a learning curve is that for a new player coming in for you, which all of these are really?
Yeah, I think sometimes people call it the same thing, but same action, they call it different. So a lot of the same patterns are going to be there in terms of, these guys are exposed to some of the same concepts, but maybe we call it something different. So there's a learning curve there, but beyond that, there's just no way around it. You kind of have to kind of keep drilling it in. Even today was a good practice for us. Spoke to a couple guys afterwards, and I think they're starting to see how all the dots fit together, sort of finally, but there's still work to do. But it takes about 2-3 weeks of, implementation. Now let's see the video. Let's see what we learned. And then they just start connecting the dots more quickly. And I think we're at that stage right now.
With a compacted schedule, are you kind of limited in the amount of time that you can use before you can introduce twists and new, or do you still follow that, it's got to be a couple of games or a week or something? What's the timeline duty in all of this when you're teaching?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think for me, it kind of has to be different for every team you coach, right? So I came in with just like a classroom teacher, which I was for 10 years. I came in with kind of an idea for what the curriculum is going to be and what the outline is going to be. But then you got to see where the students are, and you got to see where the players are. And then you just kind of have to adjust some things, like our spacing, our starting points, our defensive talk, our coverages. Those things are non-negotiable, but if we haven't mastered the foundational pieces on offense and defense, we kind of have to double down on them. I may have wanted to go a little faster on some things, but right now I'm seeing, we need to really hone in on those basics, get that right, and then we can start adding the layers.
What does it do when you don't have preseason games? How does that change your preparation? How does that change your approach?
Well, we on purpose, did obviously an inter-squad scrimmage and training camp. We played against some area, university players, and we got a decent look before we played against our first opponent, Edmonton. But every team in this league right now is basically learning on the fly. In these first 3 to 5 games, you're really learning on the fly, and this league is kind of that way. There's still a lot to learn, but now as we get into our stretch, we have a very busy stretch coming up, a lot of games. So we'll be learning through video, we're learning through walkthrough, not as much full practice. So this week's practices have been pretty important because they're kind of the first full practices we'll have for a long time, because we're going to be in a big stretch.
Tell me about the player, not anyone in particular, but the player you get in this league. What is their motivation? What are you dealing with on day one?
Everyone's different, so I think, you have some players who were in the G League. Some are trying to just stay in shape, stay in good, sharp form. They're competing. They like to compete. They're getting a little bit of extra money in their pockets. They're also marketing themselves potentially for European jobs or overseas jobs, because this is a league that plays with FIBA rules. So that allows them to kind of open up an avenue towards maybe a new market. Sometimes the Canadian players are probably trying to maybe do the opposite. Maybe they're trying to open up an avenue to the G League and maybe more to the U.S. market, and trying to put their selves in front of eyes that are watching U.S. players that are playing in G League, and they say, you know, this guy plays really good against guys we know. So then they get a chance to move up in their different markets as well.
I've never asked a coach this. Do you get a player coming in and going, hey, coach, can you help me with X, Y, and Z? That's what my last team wanted me to work on this summer. That's where they wanted to see the improvement. Do you inherit some work for these players?
Yeah, you always inherit the work of whatever, you know, whatever needs work, I guess.
Okay.
And so I think it's different for different guys. Like, for instance, our guys, they got to learn, you know, again, our system. We've got very capable guys, very good players. But sometimes when they're hearing, you know, new terminology, new concepts, you know, you get a little bit of paralysis by analysis, right? Because they're second guessing, like, wait, I just, you know, I usually just played through the situation. And once they learn, like, oh, it's all the same, they start kind of connecting those dots. And then lastly, what we'll do is, you know, we start seeing where the areas are that we keep seeing patterns of shortcomings, if you will. And then we can kind of dial into those areas with film and some extra work before practice.
Nelson, I'd like to tap in a little bit on your, you know, your day job or your winter job in the G League and ask you this question about the players, because I'm fascinated by the athlete, the modern athlete, compared to we've heard a lot about, you know, wokeness and, you know, they don't go through the wall the way they used to. How do you deal with, or how do you approach young athletes now, or what do you see from them?
You know, this is the same thing, you know, like where people say, you know, kids aren't the way they used to be, and young people are different. You know, I think the one that I kind of lean more towards is I think maybe the adults and the leaders and the parents, and, you know, maybe we're not the same as we used to receive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, not to, you know, slander anybody particularly, I think that you know, the standard bearers need to be the standard bearers, right? So if I'm, you know, we had a talk yesterday after practice. You know, I got on a couple players about a couple things, and, you know, I told them, like, listen, there's, you know, I have a choice to make on a daily basis. I feel a responsibility to tell you the truth, because if I don't tell you the truth about what I see, and it's something that's going to limit your game and your future, and I feel like I'm complicit in a crime that I had a choice to either opt into solving or to avoid responsibility and opt out. So, you know, it starts with me. You know, we haven't had any problems with any of our players at all. I think the big thing is that you have to tell them the truth. They have to know that they have to feel somewhere deep down inside. And I tell them this, you know, you don't know me well enough to know that I've earned the trust that I do care about you and your future. I hope I can continue to earn that over the course of the next, you know, month and a half. But you'll see over time that what I'm doing and why I'm doing it is only based on the care for you and your future and your game and your development. And if they can feel that, and you're consistent with it with everybody, even the best players, the players who don't play as much, and they feel that, then I think you get a lot more buy-in, because they understand that you're just trying to help them.
So two things that come out of that. One, do you deliver the truth the same way as the truth was delivered to you as a player? Or has that evolved?
No. I deliver the truth differently than I was administered the truth. But it doesn't mean that the way I have to deliver truth is worse. The way I have to deliver truth in today's age is not a bad way. It means I have to use evidence. I have to be accurate. I have to show them what I want and not just demand that they do better. I have to give them specific, prescriptive, you know, feedback that's not just, that's not good enough, you know, because today's human, not just young people, but today's human is more educated and more critical thinker. There's nothing wrong with that. We want critical thinkers. So if we want to kind of reach and connect with a critical thinker, whether they're adult, young, or older, we have to approach them with a reasonableness and with a good sense of what makes sense, and showing them what we mean and why it's going to benefit them, and not that it's just something that we want for our own power trips. You know what I mean?
We talked a little bit about the compacted schedule. We talked a little bit about your coaching staff. Do you delegate the kind of the human component of this to your assistants? I mean, my belief is you have to have any success, you have to relate to them as human beings. You need to know what motivates them. In this situation, Nelson, are you the guy that gets to know all the players, or is that a delegation amongst your staff?
No, we all do. I mean, I can't just outsource, humanity, right? I can't outsource relationships. What I think that's, on that note, Robert, I think it's a good question is, I think I heard one of the national telecasts, the broadcasters told me what the players say that you're in general, you're a player's coach, that you let them do what they need to on offense as long as they do what they do what they're supposed to on defense. And I almost chuckled to myself saying, most people would never think I would be referred to as a player's coach, because there's a certain, I don't know what that is, a label to that, there's certain,
Yep.
whatever that is. But I think when I heard that, it made me feel good. And what that means to me is that they think hopefully they think I'm fair. They think that I'm not, abusing my power, that I'm trying to help them. And that when I get on them or I correct them or I hold them to account, there's a clear reason why I do it. I explain it, and they know that there's clarity to that.
I think that's become a little bit media speak, don't you? And all across sports, players coach, hard ass coach. It's not that cut and dry. It's not that black and white.
No, a player's coach. See, that I agree with you, and that's why I say I laughed about it because I'm not we're specific, precise, demanding about what we do. So to hear I'm a player's coach makes me feel good because to me, a player's coach is a coach who delivers the instruction to the player that the player needs. The player receives it because the coach is trusted. The coach is trusted because what they're saying makes sense and because the player knows that coach wants good for them. That's a player's coach. A player's coach doesn't just let a player do exactly what they want when they want, doesn't just let them do anything. It also doesn't control them because they can't either. The player's coach is somebody who understands how to, teach and train such that you are letting them, like a good parent, you're getting them ready to operate on their own. And a good teacher leaves the scene and leaves by the end of the season, they could run their own team. They could run their own things. That's the goal of the good teacher, the good coach.
Well, it seems like a natural transition because my big thing in life is leadership. I think sports is the perfect ground for teaching leadership. Tell me about what you need from your players in terms of leadership. What is your ask?
My ask is that they come in as eager learners every day. First and foremost, you got to be a good listener. You got to be open to instruction. The old saying, your actions speak so loud that I can barely hear what you say. Is something that probably relates, so I appreciate a good person, I appreciate a charismatic person and a good talker, but if you're not marrying your talk with your actions, then you're not leading. I'd like you to do both. I'd like you to lead with your voice and your actions, but I sure want you to start with your actions first and then build in the voice later. I'm not going to want you to supplement or replace leadership by action with just by talking a good game.
What is this group like? Do you have good leaders in this group?
Yes, we have good leaders. I think the group is very connected in general. A lot of these guys grew up with each other, but that doesn't mean they're going to be connected. I think there is a trust amongst the group in general. There are good guys. We have good guys on this team that want to do well, that want to play for the guy next door to them. And I think that the leadership is exhibited in different ways. Sometimes we have quiet leaders that just Tim Duncan. He leads the right way, but maybe he's not as vocal. Steph Curry is a little bit more involved in maybe a Tim Duncan, but he's also a quiet leader. But as you saw in the finals, they talked about Game 7 against the Sacramento Kings. After Game 6, he never speaks up, but then he said, "I got something to say," and when he said it, it meant something. So there's kinds of leaders everywhere, and we've got a little bit of all of them on this team.
Culture is another media word. We love culture. Oh, the culture was no good. The culture's great. Have you instilled it? What's the culture of this team 3 weeks since it began?
Yeah, the culture of the team is an environment of truth and accountability, of consistency, hopefully on a daily basis. They know what to expect from me. We're working towards letting them know how to expect a certain set of things from themselves and each other. So that's how we're building culture. How we talk to each other, how we treat each other, how we follow through on our commitments, how we communicate. Are we on time? Are we respectful? Those are all parts of our culture.
Are they a fun group? Are there pranksters in this group, or what's it like?
Yeah. They're a fun group for sure. And I mean, I don't even see half of it. So I know that they're a fun group. I see it every now and then. In the last couple of days after practice, I see them starting to get more comfortable with just our practice space, and probably me and all our staff. But yeah, a lot. They're starting to be themselves, and there's definitely characters on this team for sure.
Well, this is probably the longest you've gone in a long time without actually talking about the game, so I should at least do that. A fifth of the way through the season, can you believe it? A fifth of the way through the season, 3-1, happy, content, ecstatic. How do you describe your feelings through 4 games?
You ask. I asked the players today. One of our players, Clayton. I said, Clayton, do you think I'm happy when we win? And he looked at me and he said, I don't think so. And I said, you're right. Right now, I'm relieved when we win. I
Okay.
said, do you think there's a time and a place where I would be happy after we win? And he said, yeah. And I said, so when is that going to be? And then and one of the players said, when we're playing the right way consistently, I said, that's correct. That's
Yeah.
when I'll know it's not an accident. I'll know that what we're doing is something that can stand the test of time, and that we are picking up what it is that we need to do so that we can get what we want.
So, with that said, then, Coach, take me into your mindset. That second game up in Edmonton, it's great for media and it's awesome for social media. It set a new record, right? Largest comeback in target time. What was going through your head?
You know what? Some days you deserve to win. Sometimes you get lucky. Edmonton outplayed us. For a great majority of that game. We were fortunate. I'll give our guys credit for finding a way to win. I don't want to take that away from our guys, but at the same time, there's so much to learn from that game, and some of the same things that happened there, led us to lose a game, in Vancouver that was competitive. All the games are going to be competitive. So,
Yep.
I think we don't want to fall for the fool's gold. When we win, a win is a win, and we are very happy for it. But we know internally, and the players know as well, that there's a lot of work to do for our wins to become something that is intentional as opposed to situational.
You got the Ottawa coming in in this league. How much time do you spend breaking down the opposition? How much time do you worry about who's in front of you as opposed to your team?
Yeah, we spend, so our assistants, basically, I kind of tell them that I ask our assistants to take the lead on scouts and be in charge of the opponents. My focus and my fixture is on our guys and our team and our personal improvement, our team improvement. So I focus on us, the coaches focus on the opponent. And then when we get to now, we start, practicing for Ottawa, they walk us through some plays. We talk about how we're going to guard it. We talk about game plan. So we do start unraveling the opponent, as part of our own preparation. Like today, we started doing that for Ottawa a little bit.
Thoughts on just the general requisite question about being in Calgary, because we really want you to love us. What do you think about Calgary? What do you think about the couple of home games so far?
It's been great. Our players love the environment. Our fans have been amazing. Opening night sellout. Second game we played, I think we had near 3,000. But when that comeback started happening in Elam, that place roared like as loud as any arena's I've ever been in. So there is a tangible feeling by our players, by our team. We can feel the energy from the crowd. And then we played in 3 sellouts out of our 4 games already. Both road sellouts, Vancouver, Edmonton, and our initial game. So 3 out of 4 have been in sellouts. So our guys are playing in packed houses, they're playing in hostile and also encouraging environments. So that's great training for them as they try to prepare to be playing in the best leagues on earth, which the CEBL is one of those.
Well, I was going to ask you, does the league feel different to you now? Because you've been in it before, but it was a younger league then.
It does feel different. I mean, of course, when I was in it, it was in the bubble, so we had no crowd.
Yeah.
But also, there's a different level of player and just talent level. I think is greater. The coaching level's been good always, but I think it's still getting better even. This is a very tough league. You know, this is an immediately tougher league than it was even last year. So I think that that's what I hear from the people that are in it. Have been in it. I know from my experience from last time I was in it a couple years ago. It's way more competitive, but it's a tough league. And now the fan interest is where it should be for the level of play that's taking place, and you're seeing that with the sellout crowds. So now, in addition to a high level of play, you're having a high level of environment, which also increases the players' performance or challenges those performances.
What's your day like? What's Nelson's? When does Nelson's day start and when does it end? How busy is it?
Depends. Yesterday, typically like today, I'll go home. Believe it or not, I probably spend 3 or 4 hours on planning practice every day.
Yeah.
And then depending on if I'm reviewing film, it's another two hours maybe of reviewing film. So, every day is that. Last night it was a great day because I got to bed around 10:30, woke up, about 6 this morning, kind of reviewed what I'd had. This was a great night's rest. So I had a great day today in terms of that. But sometimes, you're up till 3 or 4 a.m. because, some things and the big thing is there's an old saying, that, sometimes they say the point guard or the best player, there's two people who can't have a bad day. Point guard or the leader of the team and the head coach. And so sometimes, I'm a human being, so I have a regular average practice. And I know when I go home, I'm like, that practice will not cut it. And so I really double down and make sure that the next practice has to be excellent. So that type of thing can take me up to 5 to 6 hours, honestly, on a daily basis to make sure we get it all right, especially here early on when we're trying to figure out what twist of the knob needs to happen. As we start to figure our main areas out, then we can start to kind of simplify practice and repeat it. But in these first couple of weeks, there's been a lot of tinkering that I have to go home and think about.
My last one for you, because I'm fascinated by your role. Like, I'm fascinated by the role of the modern head coach. Who coaches you? Do you have mentors? Are you or not constantly, but do you check in with other people as the season's going on and bounce ideas?
Yeah, for sure. They say leadership sometimes is a lonely island. I think that, I always check in with other head coaches that I know or guys who've sat in the chair who know what it feels like. There's a weight and responsibility that comes with the position. It feels good to talk to people that know that, so that when they're giving you advice, it's different than just general person advice, general population advice. It's coming from somebody who sat in the chair, who knows what you're going through. So that advice is filtered through those lenses. And then here, specifically speaking, Coach K, Steve Konchalski, is our senior advisor, and he's an amazing mentor to everyone here. A legend in the game, coached over 40 years, over 900 wins, 3 championships here in Canada. The most amazing kind man, but he has the most amazing way of telling you the truth, but in such a way that you'll want to hear it. That he's been great for me. He tells me the truth. He gives me his feedback. We have a great relationship, and I really trust him because I know he's seen it all and done it all with the national team and everything in Canada. So I know when he tells me what he's telling me that it's coming from a place of experience at the highest level, but also he comes from a place of true care, a guy who loves the game.
I really appreciate this. Thank you, Coach. Again, it's been so much fun watching all of this and just sitting on the sidelines, and the crowd's been awesome and the team's been fun to watch. I hope you're having fun. I know that's an odd question to say for a coach, but I really appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll get to do this again. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you, Rob. Have a good day.
You betcha. There you go. The head coach of the Calgary Surge, Nelson Terroba. He is an associate head coach with the Texas Legends in the G League. That's his day job, if you will. And it's funny because we had him on when he got the gig. He sat right over there. And I believe Cammy was with me that day. And he left Calgary. I believe he went to Greece. He was coaching went over and did some clinics over in Greece. He's done some clinics in Mexico. He's a lifer. Like, he's, this is the path, right? And I'm just getting to know him. This is really the longest conversation I've had with him. And I nerd out on the coaching stuff. I apologize, but that's, that's why you listen to the podcast, all 6 and my mom. But that's okay. That's what this is all about. By the way, before I pontificate, I don't want to forget the fact that guests are brought to you by Ski Cellar Snowboard, skicellarsnowboard.com. Check out their location in the summer, McLeod Trail by Chinook Center. Are we waiting? He
is here, so
okay. Because we can make a special announcement, I understand.
yes, we can.
You want to go find him? Should we go find him?
Should we just yell at him?
You want? No, don't, because then you'll give away the ending, right?
All right.
Because this is a surprise guest.
Yes.
Although they, people complain. It's not that surprising. Shh, shh. Don't. Why do you come and yell and scream? Just let me do the introduction. Anyway, just one last thought on Nelson, and we'll get to our very special guest. It was I filled in on the barn burner, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, and Tommy Wheeldon Jr. was on, and we got into this whole thing of coaching, and Tommy was kind of the first one that let me inside I need help. Like, when we're working with these young men who need help, coaches need help. And he was working with somebody, and he was working with a mentor. And it's, oh yeah, Scotty Bowman inspired me. Oh yeah. I used to watch a lot of Glenn's. That's not it. It's getting on that phone and talking to somebody. And, leadership isn't what we used to think it is, that you're a leader and now you know everything. Now you know everything. You got to come up with an answer. You're the leader. So I really appreciate Nelson and his honesty. It was fun to kind of pick his brain on that. All right. We promised you a special guest and a special announcement. And I have been, thanks to our good friend Jack, been sitting on this for a couple of days now. He didn't even have the decency to call me and ask me, but that's all right. But I could not be more ecstatic about this, because after this program today, another program will be recorded. And it's part of a new series, I guess, or podcast, if you like, that will be hosted here on the Nation Network. It is called Live from the 55. Put up the graphic. There you go. There you go. Live. There you go. Member of the Nation Network podcast, Live from the 55. That means it's football. And if it's football, that means Danny Austin's doing it. I am so ecstatic. Our special guest is friend of the program and the host of Monday and Wednesday show next week, Danny Austin. Congratulations. This is awesome.
Thanks, buddy. I'm super excited, man.
So tell me about it. Tell me about what's going on.
I mean, I've hosted your show a couple times. I've been covering the Calgary Stampeders for Post Media for the last 7 years, which, let's be clear, I'm continuing to do.
Yeah.
I'm thrilled to have that job. But honestly, I feel like every time I've been on your show, I've tried to bring some Stampeders in, because that's my home.
100%. And I want you to.
Yeah.
We talk about that.
It's what I love. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Right.
You're great in that regard, but it's what I love. It's where I feel at home professionally. It's my favorite sport to cover. And the truth is, I think we need to talk about it more.
I do too.
And
Absolutely.
I think that one of the big problems that we have is there just isn't enough talk about the CFL and specifically the Stampeders. We're here in Calgary. The Stamps are obviously going to be the focus, but we are going to do what I love to do, which is talk about Canadian football. And we're going to be doing it twice a week. I think realistically, we're going to settle into a schedule where it sort of comes out Friday mornings as well as Monday mornings.
Okay.
In part just because we got to figure out how the studio time works.
Sure.
But I like that idea, and we're going to sort of have a very Calgary focus on that first day and more of a CFL focus on the second day. Tons of guests today. We're recording. It's going to come out tomorrow. I am talking to Derek Dennis, who was released by the Stampeders. And look, I love talking.
Hold on. Wait a minute. You're going to have a player who's no longer on the team on your show? Heresy. You can't do that. How dare you, sir?
Thrilled to have Derek Dennis, who is,
I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what people want,
Exactly.
right? They
Well,
want the story.
I want to hear what happened, and I
Sure.
want to talk to him. And I mean, honestly, there are other podcasts that they're doing CFL. I'm not trying to take away from what everyone's doing, but the reality is, I know a lot of people in the business, in the industry. It is my passion, and I want to give it a try. I want to go. I want to talk, and everyone here at the Nation Network's been super supportive, and we've been building this out together, and I'm really excited. Man.
Yeah,
It's
I am too. So kind of a pre and a post. Is that in terms of the Stampeder?
Yeah, that's basically what we're looking at.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, this week we'll be dropping an episode tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
The game is Thursday. I believe next week is also Thursday. So we'll try to have it out by Thursday morning. After that, if anyone wants to explain to me why we have Thursday games during the school year, I would love to hear it. We're gonna talk about that. But yeah, we're gonna sort of do pre-weekend, post-weekend, wrap things up, and I don't know. And I want to talk about everything when it comes to the Stamps and everything when it comes to football. And, they're great broadcast partners. I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but I think there's as you've proven here, there's an opportunity for a longer form, Stamps focused program. And I think that it's a gap in the market that I'm looking forward to trying to fill.
What do we expect from this? What are you going to be talking about this year? Are you going to be talking about a contending team? Or are you going to be talking about a rebuilding team? It's a loaded question because I think I know the answer, but
yeah, I think we're talking about probably on paper, the second best team in the CFL. Certainly in the West Division. I will not come on here. I'm not a big enough homer to claim that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are not the number one team in the CFL. They are, they are an exceptional team, and they're getting older. So there's an opportunity there, and the Stamps have been knocking on the door. But they're young, and I think that part of why I do want to do this type of thing is I don't know that everyone knows this group of Stampeders.
I don't.
And you and I have spoken about that, and they're awesome, and they're really, really, really. I think that they're the stars of tomorrow in this CFL, and I just think that could start this year. But yeah, I think we're absolutely talking about a contending team. I think that those games against Winnipeg, those games against those Western Division games are going to be massive this season, and those are games that they largely lost last year against sort of their direct rivals. So that's the big step.
Well, how good's BC going to be because they won't have their quarterback?
Well,
they have a quarterback, but they don't have the quarterback.
They don't have Nathan Rourke. They don't have the golden boy, and I don't say that.
No.
Legitimately, he was the boy in gold.
Absolutely,
incredible for the league, Canadian kid. I like Vernon Adams Jr. I think he's a top 6 or 7 quarterback in the CFL in a league with 9 of them.
Okay.
I think tomorrow's game is a really big challenge for the Stampeders. They're missing a couple offensive linemen. I think that there's a lot of pieces that have to come together. So it's a great test and a great challenge. And I expect the Stampeders to certainly be competitive tomorrow and probably win. But yeah, BC will be in the mix. I don't think they're top 2. I think that the drop off from Nathan Rourke to pretty much anybody would have been massive.
I go back to Wally's tenure and that version of the CFL, not necessarily Wally himself, but it used to be that, it wasn't uncommon for training camps to start off with a bang. Some veteran might get cut just so everybody's attention was got and everything like that. How would you describe this camp? Derek Dennis obviously got people's attention, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here.
No, and we're going to talk to Derek about sort of his view of what happened there at the end. And I think that's important to hear. And I think that the Stamps probably have, I don't think that they're going to come out and respond by any means, but I think that they have different version. No, we didn't see that. We saw this Stamps. I mean, under Dickinson and Huffnagel, it's smooth sailing in general. You do not get a lot of controversy. You don't get a lot of guys showing up late, guys skipping certainly workouts or practices. It's been very calm. And Dave Dickinson, he likes to run sort of a family friendly vibe and atmosphere, and that's what we've got in. And it's the big questions are largely whether a group of players who are very young can take that leap. If these guys who look like they're on the verge of stardom, the Jake Mayers, Malik Henry, who I would argue was a star, Reggie Bagleton, who was amazing last year but maybe didn't put up the numbers that you expected. If they can do that and keep the running game with Kadeem Carey going, they are going to be a powerhouse there. But you got to make those leaps. And as you know, development in sports is never linear. So you can't make those guarantees just yet.
I know a lot was made when the schedule came out. I know a lot was made even at the time of the actual transaction. But we are starting the season knowing that we aren't going to see Bo Levi Mitchell here in this building this year, which is a miss. Is that not a distraction? Is that one going to go away anytime soon? Or,
I mean, I think that once Bo gets going in Hamilton, we're going to move on here in Calgary. I think that's the realistic thing. He still feels like, the Calgary Stampeders icon, but if he's good in Hamilton, and that is a very good Ticats team, assuming they keep all the pieces together, assuming that it works under the salary cap, which I have questions about, that's going to be that should be a really good team. But the reality is Bo the last 2 seasons was not the Bo of years before. And I think Jake Mayer, I think it's been slightly overstated, his struggles. I think he struggled in one game, and that was the Western semifinal last year. And he's a young quarterback. This is his first year as a starter. Let's see him. Let's give him that. Let's give him that grace. Let's give him that opportunity. And I think that once we see both those teams going and we get into the season, especially because somehow the CFL schedule makers put out a schedule that does not involve the Ticats coming to Calgary, which is just a huge miss. And we should repeat that at every opportunity because it's nuts. But I think we'll move on. I think that he's going to build his own legacy in Hamilton.
Any rule changes we need to know this year?
I mean, I don't want to try to explain this nationalized American thing that I tried to spend the morning.
No, I was thinking more about, did we move the single point line back or anything like that? Or?
I mean, honestly, there's nothing really worth mentioning.
Okay.
There's some special team stuff. There are minor tweaks, but they moved in the hash marks prior to last season, and I do think it made a really big difference. But no, I don't think that the rule changes are going to be significant this year.
So we'll get in a rhythm, but generally it's a pre and a post game to the Stampeders game, with the second show being more CFL specific. Have I captured the spirit of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that still the Stampeders, we're here, we're in Calgary. The Stampeders are going to be the focus. I know, a guy like Ian Busby who has covered
Buzz.
Yeah, I think he'll come in with me on Sundays.
That's awesome.
To record for Mondays. But I think that ultimately, this is a small league, and it's fun to also talk about the other games because I watch them all. So why wouldn't we do a wrap up? And if fans from other markets do want to listen to, they are welcome to. Obviously,
well, that's nice. Yeah, that's very nice.
But yeah, I do want that pre-show. My vision would be very Stamps focused as well as the opponent.
Yeah, the game focus.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Set up the game, talk about the issues of the week. And that's the plan.
I'm ecstatic. I'm happy for you. I think this is phenomenal. I'm proud of what you've been able to accomplish here on a short period of time.
I thank you.
You're the best host of this show, and now you got your own show. So that's how it works. Danny, congratulations and best of luck. And you're back on Monday, Wednesday. By the way,
figure out.
Yeah, you're gonna have to get some guests, but we'll get past that.
We're gonna figure it out.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it. But thank you so much, man, because you've been so supportive of me for so long.
Oh man, this is what it's all about. I appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. There you go. Danny Austin. I love it. 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 This is what it should be. And loving it. You're going to love it on Saturday, UFC 289, Nunez and Aldana coming up from Vancouver's Rogers Arena this Saturday. Pay-per-view or down at your favorite local watering hole that supports the UFC. You definitely want to check this out. A great top end of the card, but I just want to talk briefly about the back end of the card too, because there's 6 Canadians on this. 6 Canadians are fighting this weekend. It's the first time the UFC has been back in Canada in 4 years. So check it out. Coming up Saturday, UFC 289, Nunez and Aldana. All right. Let's take her home. A couple things to talk about here. Start with Sport Calgary, because I am a director for Sport Calgary, and this is something I wholeheartedly endorse. All Sport One Day is open, the June edition. Check it out, allsportonday.ca. This is a made in Calgary solution. If you've got a kid under 18, 6 to 17 right there, and they want to try something different, you're always, well, I want to get them into, taekwondo, or I want to try basketball, or I want to try ringette, but you're a little bit worried about, wow, what if they try it and they don't like it? This is it. This is it. Go to the website, sign them up. It's free. In the past, it's been 70 plus sports. I mean, there's been indoor sailing at one point. Yes, indoor sailing at one point was offered. Quidditch at one point was offered. But lacrosse, any of the sports that your kids have maybe talked about but never ever tried, this is the time. All Sport One Day. Check it out, courtesy of Sport Calgary. We mentioned it off the top. The King Clancy Award finalists were announced today. Michael Backlund of your Calgary Flames is one of them. Anders Lee from the Islanders, and as well Darnell Nurse. But there's Backlund, who does some great work for a friend of mine, Parachutes for Pets. So also ALS and kids cancer and Special Olympics. He's a special guy. He's a real leader, and he's leading in the community. And his wife, Frida, deserves a lot of credit too, because she's there side by side. And finally, on a sad note, we learned today that we lost one of the greats, the Iron Sheik, passed away yesterday at, I believe, the age of, 81. The Sheik, who was an actual wrestler in Iran, and I believe the story is then became a bodyguard for the Shah of Iran, and came over to North America. And this is off the top of my head, so the wrestling geeks bear with me on this one, but I believe was trained by Vern Gagne. But anyway, some of his early days were in Minnesota. But what he's most famous for, of course, was he beat Bob Backlund when Arnold Scotland threw in the towel. It was very, very controversial at Madison Square Gardens. And this is the part that I think people sometimes forget about. He held the WWF heavyweight title for less than 1 month and then was beaten by one Terry Bollea, or Hulk Hogan, you may know him as. And that was the beginning of Hulkamania in many ways. The Iron Sheik would then, of course, team famously with Nikolai Volkov, and they at one point, I believe, beat Barry Windham and Mike Rotunda, that version of the USA Express. But anyway, that's more famously, he's been known as a very foul-mouthed curmudgeon, I guess is the best way to put it, with famous stints on Howard Stern. But for guys like me, guys my age, the Iron Sheik played a role in the 80s in rock and wrestling and the revolution of pro wrestling. So we say goodbye to the Iron Sheik. Well, you didn't have to pay for this, but this is one show I think we should have charged people. I enjoyed this one. Adam Seaborn was fantastic. Our sports business analyst from the Nation Network, Nelson Terroba from the Calgary Surge. Loved that conversation. And of course, over the moon that Danny Austin is now doing a football show here on the Nation Network. Thanks to RJ. Thanks to Jack as our producers today. Darren Haynes in on Friday. Next Monday, Wednesday, Danny Austin will be your guide, your host, your number one friend. And then a week from this Friday, if you had to pay for this, we would bankrupt all of you. Peter Marr and Eric Dahachek on the same show. That's just too much hockey goodness in one place. Have a great day unless you made other plans. We'll see you on Friday, everybody.